um, somewhere early 20th century, from sometimes from the turn of the century, from 19th to 20th, and then up to the early 20th century, and deals mainly about the forays into the unconscious or the subconscious. So it has no intent of coming up with a rational narrative in terms of content, in terms of composition, and yeah. So that's basically what it wants to convey, no? But and in contrast, my works apply the principle of violating the constraints of time and space, meaning to say, I put in elements that do not necessarily belong to the same time and space in order to come up with some kind of a coherent narrative. So the conscious and deliberate narrative in the process goes against the very idea of just letting your irrational subconscious take the lead in coming up with the forms. Siguro, to give you an idea, let's just go through some of the very small number of works that I have prepared for this morning. Can we go through them? Movement of Surrealism. You have Salvador Dali. So again, you don't normally see clocks melting in a desolated landscape. No. So, and then of course there's the portrait of the artist in the foreground. No? The title to this very famous piece. Incidentally, this is actually a very small Salvador Dali, and the title is Persistence of Memory. No? Possibility of time itself. And you have to take note that during this time, artists were very much influenced by philosophers. And among the things that concerned them was, the contrast between reality, its perception, whether reality exists only in our minds or whether what we see is reality or just a representation of a higher form that exists in the world of forms. So, but that goes all the way to Plato, and there's always a continuing conversation between philosophers and artists, and artists tend to be influenced by them. So from Plato, there's this kind of a continuation of his influence to the so-called the rationalist, and then as contraposed to the empiricist. So it's very interesting because these were the two main dialectically opposed views from was this classical philosophy that persists until now. Of course, you have guys like Kant who has this interest of fusing the two supposedly opposed views. No? So parang, at any rate, that's the point. No? What I'm saying here is artists are constantly wrestling with ideas, and the result of that is the production of art that kind of reflect their thoughts on these ideas. So in some ways, you can say that they visualize the ideas of the philosophers or the philosophies of their time, Diego Rivera. And as you can see, this may, in a bit, kind of diverge from surrealism as we know it, because this is more of surrealism, again, very conscious of how of using the images metaphorically in order to tell a narrative. So in this image, it portrays, an aspect of her relationship with her husband, Diego Rivera. So this one is the Barbarians. Well, it's not. I mean, again, don't try to figure out too much about some kind of a literary narrative in it. It's. So can we go to the next one? From Europe, we go to the Philippines. So these are two famous Filipino artists. The one is a national artist. On the left is Cesar Legaspi. What's the title to this one? The tree planters. So parang it's a little bit medyo madrama just simply for the act of tree planting, but then it appears to have foretold a very real scenario, a contemporary and near future scenario where we are facing a lot of ecological problems as a result of our rampant abuse of nature. So, ayan. And then on the other side is a painting by Charlie Koch. He's actually a contemporary of mine. He's quite young, and it's a kind of an image that reminds me something of a Max Beckmann painting, figures on a boat in the sea, things like that. But this is done in a very different manner. It's much more realistic. More expressionistic, in terms of the use of the brush strokes. Also exhibit some of these anyway, which is upcoming on this 22nd of June. So parang this is partly parang shameless promotion of my my show. The title to this piece is Batas, and so what I'm saying is, there's like a segue from surrealism to another approach to social realism, which uses metaphors and some familiar images, and then kind of putting them together in unlikely manner where you would never see them together in reality. So like in this case, it appears to be a throwback to the story of the Garden of Eden, where the first transgression takes place. So that's why the title is Batas. With the orders, you should know what order this guy comes from. I think he's Dominican. Anyway, they were among the most visible religious order in the land, and also made famous by Jose Rizal in his novel Noli Me Tangere. So this is a story of how we were kind of colonized. Ayan. So the lady in the picture is obviously a copy from a famous painting by Fernando Amorsolo. So, but instead of the palay, which in a very interesting way, maybe Amorsolo does not really know so much about in spite of the many pastoral scenes he painted, he seems to be unfamiliar with the nature of the palay because he had this pretty lady, touching a bunch of palay straws in her hand, which is very itchy actually when it comes in direct contact with the skin. No? So normally, those who would harvest the palay would have long sleeves, would put on long sleeves. No? So, but in this case, she no longer has the palay straws in her hand, but has actually a bowl of apples, no? Filled with a lot of representation of bounty, prosperity in the land. You don't really need to work so hard in order to make the land productive, which is the case of the Philippines. And again, like I said, this is stretching and even violating the boundaries or limitations of reality itself. No. Role of the institutions in our country, not just in our country, but this is more of a global phenomenon. But fortunately for the countries from where the ideology of religion came from, they have kind of gone beyond the constricting effect of religious ideology. And like in our case, we're still pretty much mired in it. And that's why it's the main thing that keeps us from really growing,